And welcome to all to the Exmoor National Park Authority final accounts committee meeting of Tuesday the 11th of January 2022. I will start. Apologies for absence. Thank you very much. And declarations of interest. Any members, any declarations of interest? Thank you very much. On to item 3. First of all, to approve as correct record the minutes of the meeting of the 6th of October 2020.
I'm happy to move that.
Thank you, Andrea. Mike, was that Mike seconded? Thank you. Any matters arising from those minutes? If there are no items arising from those minutes...
Frankly, it's quite difficult to cast your mind back 2 years.
Yeah.
A few things have happened.
I think it's salutary. Right. Thank you. Well. Public speaking. We haven't any public speakers apart from Representative Grant Thornton. Do we? And we will move on to item 5. Consider the report of the Chief Finance Officer, Gordon.
So thank you, Chairman. So there's a number of items to go through this morning, the first of which is to receive the audit findings report. And I'm pleased to say that we have both Gareth Mills and Mark Bartlett on Teams available to present their report this morning. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Gordon. If I kick off on the ICE 260 audit findings report, is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Right, thank you. So this is our sort of key report of the year. The ISA 260 report is a summary of the key issues identified during the course of our accounts audit. So I'll draw out some of the key messages in the report, and then Mark will perhaps take you through some of the points of detail. So if you turn to page 9 of 184, or page 3 of our actual report, headed up Headlines, that sets out that the audit was completed in line with the agreed timetable that we set with Gordon and the committee earlier in the year. And it was, interestingly, I think, the first audit that GT have done, certainly in the public sector, that was actually principally done on-site physically at Exmoor House. That was something that Gordon had fed back from the prior year, that he was keen to have our audit team on site, obviously subject to COVID regulations, and our team delivered the vast majority of the audit in person on site. And that, I think, helped to ensure that the audit was completed in the October-November period that we'd set out. So the key things to draw to the attention of members are that we've not identified any adjustments to the financial statements that impact on your level of reserves. So that's a really key point. So the level of usable reserves available to the authority are unchanged following the audit. We did identify a very small number of presentation and disclosure amendments, which are quite typical of any audit. And during the course of this audit, we did identify some areas to enhance existing sort of controls and procedures in certain areas, and Mark will talk through that in a moment. And they're included as recommendations in the action plan at Appendix A. This report obviously was discussed and agreed with Gordon towards the end of November, as it was originally planning to go to the 7th of December meeting. So things have slightly moved on since then, and essentially our work now is fully complete, and subject to the meeting today approving the accounts and signing the letter of representation. I would anticipate that I will release my audit opinion today, if all that information comes through, or certainly by tomorrow. And my opinion will be a clean audit opinion, unqualified, but will include a emphasis of matter around the material uncertainty on the valuation of your land and buildings. And again, that's consistent with the prior year when valuers included that material uncertainty in their work as a result of the impact of the pandemic. So in essence, the bulleted list there on the right-hand side, Mark and I have now completed our sort of final reviews of the file, and the work's all been complete by our team. And as I say, we're just waiting for the signed documents that we expect, subject to members approving the accounts later in this meeting. Just going over the page, in addition to the opinion that I give on the financial statements, we're also required to do a value for money arrangements review. Members may recall that review is slightly different for 2021. There was new guidance issued by the NAO. And what they also did is they effectively decoupled the date to conclude the VFM work from the date to conclude the accounts work. So obviously we're anticipating signing off the accounts today. In theory, we would have another 3 months then to finish the VFM work, but clearly neither us nor Gordon, and I'm sure you as members, are keen for us to use that full 3 months extension. So we are still planning to share our findings with Gordon next month. But in terms of signing off the accounts opinion, we've done sufficient work on the VFM work to satisfy ourselves that there are no issues in terms of your value for money arrangements that would preclude me from or prevent me from issuing the accounts opinion this week. In terms of our other statutory duties, just to confirm that we've not had to issue anything of that nature, and there were no objections raised to the accounts from people living within the authority's boundary. We can't issue the audit certificate, as we've said there, because the VFM work will still be ongoing, as will the whole of government accounts return. So that the audit certificate element of our opinion will be issued once we've concluded those two areas. So overall, from me, I think the audit went well. It went to the time. It was delivered in the timescales that we'd agreed with Gordon and yourselves. And just to thank Gordon and his team for their help and contribution in ensuring that the audit did run smoothly. I'll now hand over to Mark. He'll probably draw out one or two key bits of our audit just to explain and talk you through, and then obviously we'll try and deal with any questions you may have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll now pass over to Mark.
Okay, thanks, Gareth. Morning, members. Just wanted to highlight, as Gareth said, a few of the key points from our audit findings report. So if I could wanted to go through first of all the work on our significant risk areas. So on page 7 of our report, which is page 13 of your pack, is where we start to just set out the work that we did against the significant risk areas that were identified in the audit plan back in May time, I think it was. The first of those, the ISA 240 revenue risk, we've determined that that's not a risk for Exmoor, so that one has been rebutted. The second one on page 7 is the valuation of land and buildings, which you'll appreciate is an area that there's increased focus on the level of work we do there. As Gareth has said already, the valuer included a material valuation uncertainty paragraph in their valuation report, and as a result of that, we'll be including the emphasis of matter paragraph within our opinion, which draws readers' attention to that. But happy to confirm that there were no other issues arising from our work on the valuation of land and buildings. Over the page on page 8 is the other non-rebuttable presumed risk under the auditing standards, and that's around management override control. And the main part of our work in response to this is around journals, and we identified one issue to report to you in respect of journals. So we identified that a member of the authority's finance team who regularly posts journals is a super user within the SAP system. We wouldn't normally expect someone with that level of system access to be posting journals, and we've confirmed that I think that individual has never used their super user access, and I'm not even sure they were aware that they had that level of access. So we've included a recommendation for the authority to review that, and we'll come on to the management responses to our recommendations shortly. And then finally, in terms of our significant risks, the other main one on page 9 is the evaluation of the pension fund net liability. So we set out on the right-hand side there the work that we've done. We've obtained the assurances from the auditor of the Somerset Pension Fund, and happy to report that we've got no issues to bring to your attention in relation to the pension fund net liability. A couple of other things I just wanted to highlight. Gareth mentioned some internal control issues and that we've highlighting. So page 12 sets these out. So these are issues that have come up during the course of the audit, and we've assessed as to whether we consider those to be high, medium or low risk issues within the table on page 12. The one high risk issue is the one that I just mentioned regarding the super user access. So we've put got the recommendation in there to review that. We've got the other recommendations set out. I think it might be easier if I come to those when I come to Appendix A, because you can actually we can talk through the management responses to those recommendations at that point. One other thing to highlight over the page on page 13 is in respect of the final section there on written representations. So the letter of representation is on the agenda for you to approve for Gordon to sign later today. And as in last year, there is it's a standard letter apart from one specific representation in respect of the £18,000 of monies that are held in the authority's bank account, which is not within the accounts because it relates to a deposit that is being held. Other than that, the letter of representation is completely standard. And then just moving on to, if I may, to page 17, just to confirm a couple of things there. So Gareth mentioned one of the reasons we can't issue the audit certificate is around the whole of government accounts. There isn't a lot of work for us to do in respect of the authority's whole of government accounts procedures. It is literally a straightforward return that will confirm to the NEO that the authority falls below the threshold for full procedures. The issue that we have is that the National Audit Office have not yet issued the guidance to auditors or the form that needs to be completed. So that's the reason that work hasn't and can't be done yet. And as Gareth also said, the second point there, that's that, and the fact that the value for money work hasn't been completed yet is the reason why the certificate can't be issued at this stage. Just jumping ahead, then I mentioned the Appendix A, the action plan with our recommendations and the management responses. So that starts on page 22, going through to page 23. So we've got, happy that each of the recommendations have been accepted by management. I won't talk through each of those points individually unless members have any particular questions in relation to those. I think some of them have come out, as Gareth said, from our overall work around looking at arrangements around IT, etc. Recommendation 5 actually came out of an error in our sample testing, and we've got the management response accepting that. Appendix B on page 24 then just follows that we're required to follow up on the recommendations that we had in the 1920 audit findings report. We've got our assessment of each of those there. So 2 of those have been addressed in the year. The second one, in respect of disclosures in the narrative report, our assessment is that still hasn't been addressed. So the recommendation is that we feel the disclosure within the narrative report could be enhanced by further details on the medium-term financial plan and what plans there are to address any future resource shortfalls. The response from management is that the revenue budget report is where authority members would look to see that information. But in our view, the readers of the accounts are wider than the authority's members, and we feel that that's why the disclosures could be enhanced within the narrative report for those other readers of the accounts in respect of information on the medium-term financial plan. And then finally, from me, just to draw your attention to Appendix C on page 25, Gareth mentioned there was a few classification and disclosure changes. So they're set out in the second table there. So there was one amendment to the accounting policy for heritage assets and an amendment to the disclosure of the cash and cash equivalents figure, where we effectively had a net position shown, and the requirement is that if there's an overdraft position and a cash position, they should actually be disclosed separately if there's no right of offset. And both of those issues have been addressed and amended in the amended accounts. That's all I wanted to go through in terms of the detail of the audit findings report. I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, and happy for Gareth and I to take any questions that members have.
Thank you, Mark. Members, any questions? Evelyn, Stacey.
Just almost the last point that was made about the disclosures in the narrative report being enhanced and our response. And I wondered if Gordon wanted to add anything to that. I find it very difficult to know how an organisation that's funded as we are could address any future resource shortfalls.
Well, I'm happy to take on board the external auditor's recommendation. I suppose for the most part, the narrative report in the accounts is the bit that summarises in qualitative form the previous financial year. And so the idea that you would also have a section in there which looked forward in the medium-term financial plan, in my mind, it wasn't the natural place for it to sit. The natural place to look for the forward-looking medium-term financial plan is within the revenue budget where it's produced. But obviously, if the auditors believe that there are additional benefits to having a summarised version of the MTFP in the accounts, in the narrative report, then I'm happy to do so.
Francis Nicholson.
Or as an alternative, since that's also a public document, the link on the website to it, which would be shorter and would save you summarising. It would take people straight to it if they wanted to look.
Yeah, we could do that for the extended version, as we do for the corporate plan. There is a link to the
Exactly.
corporate plan in the narrative
Exactly.
report also. Yeah.
Any other questions, members? In which case, can move on. Gordon. I'll go back to my page a moment.
Yes, so thank you, Chairman. So the second recommendation was to authorise the letter of representation as set out in Annex 2. So this is the document just referred to by the auditors. If you could sign, Chair, if you're happy with that.
Members? I think so. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Everyone.
And finally, Chair, it's to adopt the statement of accounts. So the authority back in July had the draft accounts presented to them, and this is now the final version of the accounts to which the audit certificate will be attached. So there are those presentational changes that have been picked up within the version of the accounts that you see there. So if you're happy to adopt that version of the accounts.
Proposed, seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Are there any other questions from members? Gordon, anything else from you?
Nothing further from me for today. Just this is the annual audit findings report, and the audit letter will be going to the authority in February as well, which is a summarised version of the audit findings report. But the authority as a whole will not see the accounts again. They'll just be published after today. So that's
Thank
all from
you
me.
very much. And thank you very much, both Gareth and Mark. And for
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
Actually, that's what I was going to do, is thank Gareth and Mark, because I did note that they were here at our previous meeting as well.
Yes.
This is a far more efficient way of doing it. Saves them travelling.
It is quite an efficient way of doing it.
Where the people
No, we appreciate that. I mean, I'm conscious, obviously, I am some distance away, and I'm grateful for the ability to dial in. And even though Mark is obviously a lot closer, we appreciate that. And to be honest, a lot of my local authority meetings are of a hybrid nature at the moment, and it is a lot more efficient. All my NHS ones are fully automated and online, so thank you for that. And we do have a genuine sort of interest in the authority. I think I've said before, I do 3 of the national parks nationally for Grant Thornton, and we've got a good professional working relationship with Gordon, so hopefully that will continue.
Well, thank you very much. It's easy, I must admit, isn't it, to look at the sort of a rather quick meeting at the moment to sign these off, and that seriously underestimates the amount of time and effort that's gone on behind the scenes.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, there's a lot of work on both sides. Absolutely.
Of this quality, so it is appreciated. Obviously, it is the background to our working of the authority, and it is seriously important we pay due regard to it. Andrea.
Just finding out for the minutes as well, I'd like to thank Gordon, because again, we've had another successful year, and it's been challenging again, but thank you very much. And to the team, of course.
Thank you very much. On that basis, I will sign the statement of accounts in a moment. Do I have to do them now during the meeting, or?
Well, we'll finish off by signing, if that's okay, Gareth and Mark, and I'll make sure you get a clean version in the post.
That's fine, and then I think if you can just email it, Gordon, through to us both, and as I say, if we can get all the checks done today, I'll release my opinion later today, Gordon, and then we're done.
Great.
That's very much.
Thanks, everyone. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. I have not been notified of any other business of urgency, in which case I will thank you all very much for your attendance and declare the meeting closed. Thank you.